All right, time to talk about Mycroft Holmes by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Anna Waterhouse. So, I was curious about this book because a third book of this series just came out recently, and so I decided I would actually buy both the first and second. But anyway, also, you can't tell just from watching these videos, but for the last week of the month of February, my computer has been in the shop, so I have more time to read and less time to just like waste on the internet. So that's why maybe I've been reading more this week. I don't know, maybe a little bit, but anyway, this book was a lot of fun. I'm not gonna like claim it was amazing or anything. Like, I don't feel that all of the elements hang together as well as one might want. I kind of felt like a few of the things that happen weren't adequately explained, but for the most part, it's really good. And it's a lot of fun, and it reads really quickly. So the basic, I mean, obviously it's a Sherlock Holmes pastiche book, right? Except it's about his brother. So in the Sherlock Holmes stories, Sherlock Holmes has an older brother named Mycroft, and I don't know, for some reason Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was like, I really want to write books about him specifically, and so he did. So it's fun. Basically, in this book, Mycroft is 23. He works for he's the, what do they keep calling him? The secretary for the Secretary of State of War, and it's like, this is such a stupidly long title, but thanks, it made me laugh. But anyway, he's got this government job and is living a great life, honestly. He's got a fiance and he's happy, and then he finds out from his best friend Cyrus Douglas, who is this older black man who owns a tobacco selling business in London, and is from Trinidad, that back home in Trinidad, children specifically, have been mysteriously dying. So when he tells his fiancée Georgiana, who is also grew up in Trinidad, she's like, oh shit, I have to go to Trinidad immediately. And then he's like, I'll go with you. And she's like, nope. And then he's like, fine, Cyrus, I'll go with you. And you know, and Douglas is like, I don't really want you to, but I can't stop you. So anyway, then they all go to Trinidad, and there's just, it's a jaunt. It's an interesting, I think, idea, just because obviously the authors wanted to like take the Sherlock Holmes mythos kind of and write a mystery that gets into some more like aspects of historical reality that the Sherlock Holmes stories generally don't go to explore. So slavery, yay, race relations, stuff like that. And yeah, so Douglas is a good character. I quite like him. And I like their take on Mycroft, who at this point in his life is very different from how he'll appear later in the actual like Arthur Conan Doyle short stories. So, like you probably saw, this thing has a sequel, which is probably going to involve Sherlock Holmes quite a bit more. And then it also has a third one that I do not own because it was only in hardcover, and I was like, I don't see the point in paying more just for a hardcover. So, just, you know, because I've been feeling like, God, I've got all this extra time because I can't dick around on the internet at will, all, you know. So, I've just been reading. So, anyway. I also quite like the cover design of these are all chains. And then there's like this ominous skull in the chains. So, okay. Yes, it's been, honestly, it's been a while since I've read a Sherlock Holmes type book that just wasn't the original stuff. There's a handful of ones I've gotten, you know, over the years, but it's been a while, and it was like really fun to go back to that thing and do it and read another one, and Mycroft is interesting, and plus it not being Sherlock, you can like play around with it more, because it's just, Mycroft Holmes is a character we don't know as much about, and we don't spend very much time with. So yeah, I enjoyed this, yes. Haha. Mycroft and Sherlock. Sherlock, yep, that's how that's pronounced. Anyway, so this is obviously the sequel of the book I just read. And I read this entirely in one day. The whole thing. That's what happens when I don't have access to my laptop to distract me. So this was fun. I don't know, I feel like largely the same things to say about it as I had about Mycroft Holmes. There were a couple of things that I kind of thought, like, didn't make that much sense. I liked the murder mystery conspiracy more this time around because it was grosser, and just setting it in London was like, I don't know, it just felt more Sherlock Holmesy, you know? But it's largely about a conspiracy that they kind of figure out has something to do with opium, and it has something to do with, like, people ending up drawn and quartered and left on, you know, just dead, obviously, and their noses and their junk cut off and just kind of left in the street, and all of this kind of comes together, and there's a bunch of stuff about, like, so what Douglas... Okay, so part of the plot of the last book involved Mycroft getting his hands on, like, a fuck ton of money that he basically just, like, stole. And Douglas has used some of that and his own money to open a sort of a school for boys who are living on the street or who have, like, shitty chimney chute jobs or whatever, right? Those kinds of kids, to educate them and to get them apprenticeships. And so it's also tied into some stuff with some of these kids and some stuff that they've been involved in. Obviously, Sherlock is in it quite a bit more. This book is also set, like, 3-ish years after the first one, so, like, in the last book, Sherlock was in it a bit, but he was also, like, 16, so he wasn't in it a ton, but he was in this one quite a bit, and I really enjoy the way they write him, because I think it's, like, pretty accurate. I mean, he's very self-centered and kind of myopic, I guess. Like, he only cares about a certain number of things and just can't be arsed about anything else. And this, of course, causes Mycroft no end of grief. And he's also kind of not quite figured out yet the sort of obvious what he's gonna do with his life, but this is like him being like, oh, I'm gonna solve this case. And then Mycroft is like, stop doing that. It's dangerous. And he's like, I'm gonna do it without telling you. It's like, great. That's the right solution. Gonna get yourself killed, you stupid kid. He's like 18. He's not a kid. Okay, but that's not the point. The point is, I really enjoyed it. And also, like, it reads super fast, and it was fun, and I really do want to read the third one pretty soon, but, like, I have a pile of library books I should probably get to first, so tune in later this year, maybe, for that, but I think that's good enough. I think you get it. Alright, I'm gonna try and keep this kind of low-key because it's late, but I read Devil in a Blue Dress by Walter Mosley. Yay! This is a noir murder mystery type story set in 1948 in Los Angeles, and it is about a Black War veteran who's just been fired from his job making airplanes, and he goes to get a drink at his friend's bar, and his friend's like, hey, I know somebody who's looking for someone to do a job, and you might be able to make some money. You know, he just wants somebody found. This is about, yeah, that's what it's about. He goes to meet this guy. The guy says, I'm looking for someone. She likes to frequent black jazz clubs, so I can't exactly go looking for her because I'm white, but you're not, so, you know. So anyway, that's where it begins, but, like, as the story goes on, it gets kind of more and more layers And like, ultimately I found it kind of confusing. Almost like there were just like so many characters and so many things going on, even though at the end of the day all it was really about was some stolen money. But like, it was just such a rabbit hole to get there. I did really like it though. Like, I think it was, you know, really well written. I mean, I don't know, who am I telling this to? Everybody agrees. It's Walter Mosley. This is like not obscure, but I'm just saying, I thought it was really well written. But I found the plot confusing. I don't know, maybe I was just tired, but I really did like it, and I would definitely consider reading more of the series of books about just like Easy Rawlins. I don't know if you have to read them in order, but this is the first one. So in this one, like at the very end, he decides to become a detective, a private detective, but obviously like it's this case that got him into it, and it's just a really interesting place and a time to set the story as well. Like, there are a lot of very colorful characters and the places that they hang out, and there's a lot of really unpleasant stuff in this book too for such a short book, but there's several dramatic incidents of him being treated very badly by people, racist people, and just like people, and like cops as well. And also there's some weird child sexual abuse stuff. None of it's like actually happening on page for the most part, but it gets talked about, and I was not really expecting that. But yeah, I don't know, it's a really good book. And I like this picture on the cover, even though it doesn't really represent anything that happens in the book. Yeah, it's a solid noir. Good morning, and it's not morning, it's afternoon, whatever. I have finished reading This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone. Wow, reading a book from 2019. Who is she? Alright, this was real good. So, it's a little hard to explain, but I'm gonna try. I would classify it as science fiction, but it's also a love story, basically, about two people on opposite sides of a time war. Basically, both of them come from a future that is impossible to happen if the other future happens. Wow, I could have worded that better. Okay, but basically, each future is opposed to the other, and their factions are attempting to go back in time and change history in little bits and big ways and whatever, in order to ensure that the future will hold their particular future. And so each of them is a agent on one of those sides, and they go by Blue and Red throughout the whole book. Those aren't their real names, that's just what they get called. And they start corresponding. They start writing each other letters, although they're all hidden and coded in very strange ways. But at first it's just to taunt each other, like, haha, did you see what I did there? I beat you, and they're never in the same place at the same time, but they're always like coming to similar places, and they're always interacting with each other's like plans and foiling them. But as the story goes on, they start to really enjoy writing to each other, and it's kind of this gradual falling into actually caring about each other. And it's all very strange. It's flowery and poetic. Basically every chapter is in a different place and a different thing is happening. There is not a lot of detail as to how any of this is supposed to fit together, but you just kind of have to go into it knowing that this is not a book that's going to actually explain like how anything works. You don't need to know. It's fine. It's just pretty writing, and it's very, very flowery, very like over the top, and I really enjoyed it. I can't say that I was that invested in either of the characters or in their relationship, partly probably because it's just so, like, removed from any kind of reality. But I did want to keep going, you know. I wanted to know how it would end. I wanted it to end well. I won't tell you how it ended, but also, they're both women, if you're interested in that, which is kind of hard. I mean, how shall I put this? I mean, they're both from futures where people are just so removed from, like, humanity as we know it, that it's kind of hard to just make that statement, but they are both referred to as she all the time, so sure, we'll go with that. And it was really wonderful, and yeah, I'm really glad that I read it. Hi. Why is my face so pink? Or is that just me? I don't know. Okay. I read Evil at Heart by Chelsea Cain. I am, like, reading a lot this month so far, and it's only the 10th. So, audiobook, yes, okay. This is the third in a series about a detective and a serial killer. The basic backstory is that for 10 years he chased this serial killer only to have her infiltrate his task force right at the very end, and he actually started an affair with her for a pretty short period of time because she pretty quickly kidnapped him, tortured him, a variety of other unpleasant things. And okay, so then the series is set, like, hang on. Okay, so then the series is set, like, 2 years after all of that stuff went down. She was caught, she was in prison. Okay, so book 3, obviously, to talk about it is going to give spoilers for the other 2, but when have I ever cared? At the end of the second book, well, okay, partway through the second book, she escaped prison. At the end of the second book, she was not apprehended and escaped. So, in this book, we come back in a few months later. Archie was, that's the detective, did, like, a fuck ton of Vicodin in the first 2 books, so his liver was failing. So he had to go to the hospital for a while, and then he had to spend some time in the psych ward. And that's where he is at the beginning of the book, and is recovering from the further ordeal, and then some bodies turn up that have been mutilated, and he thinks she's killing again because they had a pact. She said, all right, don't kill you can't try to kill yourself. I won't kill anybody else. And he was like, all right, fine. So has she broken it? What's the deal? And then it goes on from there. So I liked this book. I did. I feel like these are fairly, I mean, honestly, like, I don't read a lot of thrillers, so I don't know. I mean, they're not maybe the most interesting thrillers out there, but I like a good, you know, serial killer. I like a good distressed, disturbed, troubled detective. I also like a story where a character is just, like, really badly damaged and kind of has to, over time, like, become healed, I guess. And that's, you know, where the series is kind of headed. Archie definitely ended this book in a much better place than he ended the first 2 books. And I'm, like, proud of him. Okay, so, yeah, no, I liked this book. I felt there are a couple of complaints. Like, one of them was I felt like it was kind of maybe a bit ableist in the way it handled the psych ward stuff toward the beginning of the book. Just the way that it talked about the psych ward and the people in it. Some of that, I think, is down to just how the characters were talking about it, and I'm like, that's okay, I guess, but I don't know, just some of it was like, okay, we can, you know. It wasn't that bad, though. It wasn't that bad, just, like, a little bit bothersome. But, another thing is, like, so there's, in the climax, there's kind of this back and forth between different characters saying, okay, well, Archie and Gretchen, like, fucking spoilers, they're in this. But anyway, where they're telling each other things, and then being like, just kidding, I lied, here's the actual truth. My problem is that I feel like since we're in Archie's head, we should know more about whether he's lying or not. I don't like the device of being in a character's head and then they don't tell the audience important things for the audience to know that you'd think they would be thinking about. I don't know, like Archie makes a claim to Gretchen, and then later he switches it back around to another thing, the opposite thing. And then at the very end of the book, he tells Susan that actually he was telling the truth in the first place. So it's like, okay, but I feel like this should be something the audience could tell more because we're in his head. I don't know. Like, I get why we don't know whether Gretchen's telling the truth about anything because we're not in her head. Plus, part of the point is that Archie doesn't know what to believe about anything that she's told him. But, you know, just I feel like we should know more about his thought processes. I don't know. Maybe. But those are kind of minor overall. I enjoyed it. It's nice and gruesome. There's some real nasty parts. There's, you know, some serious, like, body mutilation horror stuff. I would like to say, hey, Chelsea, it's fine. It's okay to get off on a little pain. And not to imply anything, but, you know, I'm just saying, like, there's a character in here who does, and I'm like, that's fine. That's not a problem. It's literally everything else he's done that's a problem. Like, we have a long list of issues, and that's not on it. But anyway, yeah. I'm always surprised in these books, and I shouldn't be, but I always am surprised when it gets, how shall I put this? When they start talking about masturbation and erections. I'm like, what? And then I'm like, they've been doing this since book one. What are you talking? And it'll be like twice in the entire book. But for some reason it always throws me. I think maybe because it happens so rarely, but it does happen, then you're like, oh no. But part of it is just, yeah. Anyway, maybe that won't come up again. Considering the stuff that Archie says at the end of the book regarding Gretchen, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I'm really enjoying this series. I'm definitely going to keep reading it. And I think that's enough for now. Alright, hello. And The Eye of the Heron by Ursula K. Le Guin. So it's been a little while since I've read any Le Guin. Okay, no, it's only been like a year. What am I talking about? But, you know what? A year is a little while. And this is quite a short book. I don't know that I would say it was fantasy or science fiction, really. Maybe closer to science fiction because it is set in the future on another planet. But the people's technology level is, like, pretty low. Like, I would compare it to maybe late 1800s. And they don't even seem to have a printing press, actually. But it's such a short book that that's just something that it really doesn't get into. Okay, so the basic premise is that in the future, people are living on the planet Victoria, and they come in two groups. They're the people living in the city and the people living in the town. The people in the city control the town, and they make them do all the farming work, while they have the better technology. I mean, it's not like particularly impressive, but still. And all of them, the people in the city originally came to Victoria as prisoners. It was supposed to be sort of Australia in space, but they were the only group ever sent. The people in the town are actually come from a group of people who chose to travel to Victoria. They had this mission of peace that they wanted to sort of propagate, but Earth did not appreciate it, and so they left to try and make a peaceful place elsewhere, which didn't work out super great, but like, you kind of know ultimately they're going to be successful. And yeah, so essentially just in this book, the people of the town want to expand out of the town, and they want to do some traveling on this planet, because humans basically just live in this one large kind of bay area, and they haven't like really explored a lot beyond that, or gone and made any settlements elsewhere. And the city super disapproves and won't let them, and the town is like, I'm sorry, you're not in charge of us. So, yeah, and then the main character is this girl named Luz. Well, I say girl, she's like in her early 20s, but she's from the city, her father's one of the bosses, and it's sort of her story of like self-actualization and realizing that she's sick of being sort of lied to, and just like she knows that at some point, I mean, it's quite a sexist world, like in the city, like she knows at some point she's just gonna have to marry somebody she doesn't even care about and continue to just have a very dull life, and she decides to leave and go to the town. But okay, so it's Le Guin, so it's very well written, it's very beautiful, but it kind of just like happened. Like, I didn't care that much, to be honest. There were some really good paragraphs. I liked Luz, but it wasn't that interesting. And it was very basic too. It was just kind of like, just a very basic, like, why, like the city and patriarchy and just like all of these incredibly basic concepts, which, I mean, maybe they were less basic in 1978. I don't know. For some people, I'm sure. But, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm vibing with all of this, Ursula, but I just don't care that much. And then part of it is just like, it's such a short book. There's just not time to get into anything. And I'm just not that interested. Yeah. So I mean, it's, I feel like I'm gonna forget about this book. In a year, I feel like I'm gonna be like, the what now? Did I read that? And just, it's just not gonna stick with me. I mean, a lot of her books that I've read and really adored, I can't tell you what the plot was, but I do at least know that I loved the book, that it blew me away, and that I'd love to read it again. But this, I'm just like, I don't even know. It happened. I'd never heard of it. I saw it on the library shelf. I was like, we have to read this because it's Le Guin. But, yeah, not really that interesting for me. I mean, there were some small aspects. Like I said, there were bits that were very well written, of course, that were beautifully written, and that I did like. But, you know, overall, the overall product, I was just like, don't really care that much. So, I guess that's what I have to say about that. Sorry, guys. Alright, here we are at the very end of March, and I have finished The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, which is a nice, big, chunky fantasy, and that's just what I wanted. So this book, it was quite good. I mean, like I said, it's fantasy, and I have not really read much fantasy this year at all. But I felt a hankering for it, so I picked this up from the library back, you know, when the library was open. Tragic. But I have like a stack of library books, so I'm good for a while. Anyway, so basically this is a fantasy set in a sort of fantastical version of China, basically. And the main character is named Fang Runin, or Rin, and she was a war orphan, and she wants to get away from her terrible foster family, and the only way that she can see to do that is to get a good enough score on the nationwide examination so that she can go to Sinigard, which is the military academy, and it's free. That's why she wants to go to Sinigard, because the other ones aren't free and she has no money. So, all right, so that's the beginning, and then the book follows her training at Sinigard and discovering some magical abilities. It's less Harry Potter and more like that, less that kind of magic, and more like, oh, I have the ability to call on the power of a god. So, yeah. And then some stuff happens, and it gets pretty dark, and I I went into this book knowing that it ends with her doing something terrible. But I'm gonna tell you, I did not predict exactly how terrible that thing would be. Yeah, so I guess if you like stories where the main character in some ways like becomes a monster by the end, and I did like it, and I really want to read the sequel. I don't know if this is intended to be a trilogy ultimately, but it does have one sequel currently, which of course I can't read right now because I can't go to the library. But that's fine. I'll get to it eventually. But yeah, I really liked this. It was good. I mean, Rin was interesting. I will say that, like, I don't know if I feel like her rage, I guess, that she feels over the course of the story as it kind of evolves, kinda doesn't feel as organic as I might want it to be. I don't know, what am I saying? Like, I guess that I feel like at least some of the things she's angry about aren't really directly connected to her. Like, I don't know, I just wish, I don't know. But it was a good book. Like, I wish I'd been more connected to the characters and the story and everything, but like, I think that's not really the book's fault. That's just me, just like, I wasn't in exactly the right obsessive mindset getting into this. But no, I really did like it. And there's no romance plot, which is amazing. And it's got some interesting sort of mentor characters. I have a definite favorite between the two because I'm extremely predictable, and my favorite is always going to be the one with great power who chooses not to use it because to use it would be worse. I love characters like that, okay? But yeah, so Rin, on the other hand, is like, actually, I'm gonna burn the world down. And you're like, girl, no, that's a bad idea, but whatever. So yeah, whatever. So this is the Poppy War, and I really want to read the Dragon Republic now, but I can't. And yeah, I don't want to get into too much, I think, detail with talking about this, but I did really enjoy it, and I think that's good enough for now. I got one last thing I wanted to mention, though. Since it's the end of March, that means it's the end of the first quarter of the year, and I thought, you know, it might make sense at each quarter to talk about how far I've come in my 20 books to read challenge, and see, you know, am I on path, or am I behind, or am I ahead? So right now I have read 5 of the books on the list. Ignore this part. And this is the list. And yeah, I've read 5 of the books, and that's exactly a quarter. So I am doing amazing right now. I don't know how long that is going to last, but for now, I'm in a very good place. So yeah, so there's that, and Poppy War was good, and it gave me that high fantasy fix that I was looking for. So yeah,